can do it in a slicer form. So like here, if I select January, then I'll be looking at data for January visualized in the graph, and the same data will be in the pivot. If I change to April, it will be the same thing. Changing on the cost element groups, you'll see that data will be changing depending on what you have selected. This is going to help us to create more interactive dashboards, and it will make your life easier. You can always press a Ctrl T or go to insert, then you create a table. Mine is already a table, that's why when I select in the table, it already shows me that this is a table design. So after creating this, you can name your table, it's fine. We can name this as raw data. The next thing is, after you have cleaned up your table, make sure that cleaning up, you can check this video in the corner, that description given the description below. The link is given in the description below. Creating slicers, go to insert in your tab. Before creating slicers, what we have to make sure is that we have to get a summary from our table, and the summary we only get it directly using pivot tables. So I will create a pivot table first. It will give me a dialog box asking whether it should create a new worksheet. No, I already have an existing worksheet where I want my pivot to be placed. So this is it. I'll select where it's supposed to be, and you must confirm that the location is selected, then OK. So the moment I do that, it will create for me a framework of a pivot table and a pivot table fields for selection. We always have 4 parts. Those are filters, columns, rows, and values. Now, it is only a drag and drop. So I'm going to begin with regions. I drag it into rows. Then I bring my actuals into values. So it will automatically create for me a default formatted pivot table as you see it. Formatting this, you can always start with by going to design, change this to tabular, because now you don't know what are row labels meant, or what does it mean in my data. So when you go to design, report layout, and change this to tabular form, it will automatically put for you the headers. Then if I want to change the formatting of the numbering, it is always a right click, you come on number formatting, then we change this one to numbers, and I will say I want to use separators either with decimal places or with not, depending on how you need it, and that is it. I'll say OK, and this will be changed and formatted into numbers. Now, our main goal is, how do we use slicers and how do we use them? Where do we use them? When do you take a decision to have slicers in your data? So when you have already a pivot table, you can create as neat as you want it to be. Like I can even have this in 2 columns. You see now it creates the business area in 2 columns, then the regions remain in 2 rows. So you can decide that, or you can shift this one in 2 columns and shift the other one in 2 rows, and you'll get the same thing. So it is all about on what you want to build, which report do you want. Now going with this, you will check that every time I make an adjustment or a refresh, even if, let's say, these rows were shrinked to that level, the moment I refresh this, let's say let me remove actuals, add them again, you'll see that the formatting changes. And how do we capture the formatting? Remember, we had formatted this to numbers, and we had done this. Okay, so the numbers, we have formatted our figures into numbers. If you want the pivot table to be refreshed at some point and your formatting should stay the same, right click, change this in pivot table options. You see now here there is a tick, a check on auto fit column width on update and preserve cell formatting on update. So I will remove this because I don't need auto fit. I want to preserve, so I can remove also that, such that all what I have formatted should remain the same. So this is okay, which means even if I do changes here like how I did before, my formatting remains the same. So okay, that one remains like that. Our goal now is creating slicers. How do we create slicers? There are two options. Option number one, you can create slicers directly from the pivot table fields by right clicking on the field and add slicer. So when I add a slicer, this is it. Option number two, deleting this out. Option number two is moving into insert through the pivot table analyze, that is the tab pivot table analyze. Then we shall get our insert slicer here. So when we insert slicer here, it gives you an option of selecting even more than one. So I will select the date, which is the, what should I select? I'll select the business area, then, and I think I can go with that for now. So which means if I've selected the business area into the slicers, then I no longer need it into the in my column, so I can drop this one such that I remain with a brief pivot table and have the other one on the filter side, which is the slicer. Now I'm going to do let me have also the business area, sorry, the region first. Let's have the slicer of the region, something I want to show you. Now, when I select Africa, our pivot table shrinks to only Africa. When I select this one, it shrinks only to Australia and New Zealand. So when you press a control, if you want to select more than one, you click, you select more than one. It will select the three. When I check my list, I will find the three selected. What does that one mean? That instead of doing the filters directly in my pivot, the slicer may be the best option. So that is the purpose why we use slicers. So I'll delete the region because I already have it in the table. I don't need a slicer for it. Now let's look at how do you format slicers. We can first beautify this. How do you change the format or design of the pivot? Move into design. I can change this one to orange. That is better. Then if I want to use the same format with my slicers, then you can click on the slicer, go on slicer tab. You can change, look for the same format, which is nearly the same as your table, to just have uniformity into your formatting. Then I can do the same. If I want to change this to that, you can do the same. Either you can clicking on the other slicer, then you select also the format. Now another thing I want to show you, sometimes you may have, like you see our months or date, you may want to change these headers. Yes, you right click and you go to slicer options or slicer settings. So in the slicer settings, that's where we have our caption. So I can call this one months. Yeah, you can call those months. Then another thing, you may remove even the header, it is up to you. So I will do okay, and this one will change directly to months. Then if I want to reduce on the height my slicer is having, which means I can create more than one column, you create the columns from here. So if I say column 2, I need 3 columns, you see it shrinks to that bit such that it is easy for me to move in any other portion of my report I would like to move it. Even this one, I can create the second column such that I can easily station them somewhere if I'm to come up with something like a dashboard. So there are many settings you can check on one of our videos. The description will be the link will be attached in the description below for creating dashboards through Excel. Then the other thing is slicers. The importance of slicers is So that is it, guys. This is how we use our slicers. Then one more thing, if we wanted to create a chart, then we see how it matches with our slicers. I'll click into my pivot table, move to pivot table analyze. There is always an option for creating a chart, a pivot chart, or you can always move to insert, then you go and create a recommended chart and you'll find one, or you can choose any of those. So if you go directly to pivot table analyze, we shall create a pivot chart type. So when you click on that, it will automatically bring for you the dialog and you select the chart of your choice. So this is it. I can do a quick format here, remove the buttons, field button, then I can double click on this to get the field settings, increase the width, reduce the width between, put labels, something like this. Now here it means that every time I select a slicer, my data will be changing depending on the business unit or the business area I've selected. If I select January, it will bring for me data for only January. If I select March, it will bring data for me March only. So if I want to select multiple, you select, there is this option of multiple selection. There you'll select more than one you need, but remember to untick it such that you go back to the default of single selections. Or another option is dragging. So I can select this, then drag down, it will select all of them. I can select this, drag up to March, it will select March to January to March. So that is it, guys. These slicers will help you to come up with beautiful dashboards, interactive, and it will ease you and work.